Good afternoon and salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Brendan Lepal. You're watching World Today, and here are our top 10 stories of the day. A 17-year-old man was detained in Thailand's Hat Yai district after he used a stolen firearm in a school to injure a teacher and a teen girl. According to police, the suspect has a sister at the school, but the motive has yet to be determined. The wounded teacher undergone surgery and is now in an intensive care unit, while the teen girl was shot in the waist and now in stable condition. Russia claims it will take technical and military measures if Greenland is further militarized. Its foreign minister Sergei Lavrov announced the matter in the State Duma, the lower house of the Russian parliament. He spoke on international situation in front of Russian lawmakers, insisting on peace in the Arctic zone. US lawmakers voted to reject Donald Trump's tariffs on Canadian goods. However, any actions aimed at undoing Trump's tariffs on trading partners will still need US Senate passage and the president's signature. It will also likely face a certain veto by Trump. Wednesday's rebuke comes after the expiration of a measure barring any vote on the issue of tariffs in the chamber. Canadian police has identified the person who carried out a deadly school shooting in a school as an 18-year-old woman with mental health issues. However, no motive has been given for one of the worst mass killings in Canada's history. The killer had died by suicide after the shooting, and police revised the death toll down to 9 after an initial 10. Cuba braces for an unprecedented disruption in its aviation sector as intensified U.S. sanctions increasingly restricted its access to aviation fuel. 9 major airports across the country will suspend fuel supplies until 11 March. All international flights must now arrive with sufficient fuel for their return journeys. Domestic flights are completely suspended. Argentina's Senate debated a controversial labor reform bill as thousands of workers gathered outside the National Congress to protest. The reform, pushed by Libertarian President Javier Milei's government, aims to incentivize formal employment. It also intends to reduce severance payments and wrongful termination lawsuits. The UN deployment program began clearing a wartime garbage dump in Gaza that has grown too large. Over the next 6 months, UNDP plans to transfer the base to a new temporary site prepared south of Gaza City, built to meet environmental standards. The project is funded by the Humanitarian Fund and the European Union's Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid Operations. Mexico announced that at least 28 people in the country have died from the measles outbreak that began in 2025. Authorities have registered 9,074 cases so far. Official data showed the country has 6.7 cumulative cases of measles per 100,000 inhabitants. Mexico has 28 million measles vaccines to distribute, which its president said is more than enough. Armed rebel forces killed 5 police officers in northwest Pakistan on Wednesday. Police said they came under attack upon their return from the outskirts of the city of Dara Ismail Khan. Police killed 4 of the rebels in a retaliatory attack. The country is currently grappling with a rising wave of violence. Tottenham Hotspur have sacked head coach Thomas Frank after less than 8 months in charge of the team. The development followed a 2-1 home defeat to Newcastle, which left Spurs in 16th place in the Premier League. The team failed to secure a single win in their last 8 Premier League matches, marking their worst run since October 2008. And that was a quick snapshot of our top 10 stories of the day. And up next, the complete World Today Bulletin. Stay tuned.
Dunia Digital penuh dengan kandungan ganas, eksploitasi kanak-kanak dan buli cyber berleluasa di luar kawalan. Akta Keselamatan dalam Talian 2025 atau AMSA dikuatkuasa untuk melindungi rakyat. Pengguna boleh bertindak atas kandungan yang berisiko. Setiap laporan yang dibuat, platform digital wajib bertindak pantas terhadap penyalahgunaan digital. Dengan AMSA, internet kini lebih selamat untuk kanak-kanak dan keluarga kita.
Welcome back. A man using a firearm stolen from a police officer who injured a teacher and a girl at a school in the South Thailand's Hat Yai district on Wednesday has been detained. The provincial government in a statement said the 17-year-old suspect entered Patong Pratan Kiriwat School in Songkhla Province's Hat Yai earlier in the day. According to police commander Terasak Chayota, the suspect has a sister at the school, but the motive has yet to be determined. A female teacher was critically injured and had undergone surgery and is now in an intensive care unit, while a teen girl was shot in the waist and now in stable condition. Police remained at the scene into the night on Wednesday while people gathered outside the school gates. Gun violence and ownership are not uncommon in Thailand. In 2002, a former police officer killed 36 people, including 22 children, in a gun and knife attacks at a nursery in the country's east. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Wednesday that Russia will take technical and military measures if Greenland is further militarized. Lavrov made his remarks in the State Duma, the lower house of the Russian parliament, where he spoke on international situation in front of Russian lawmakers.
Разумеется, в случае милитаризации Гренландии, создания там военных потенциалов, нацеленных на Россию, мы примем адекватные контрмеры, в том числе военно-технического характера. Наша принципиальная позиция, тем не менее, Арктика должна оставаться зоной мира и сотрудничества.
In January, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that the situation around Greenland's territorial affiliation does not concern Russia. The Republican-controlled House of Representatives voted on Wednesday to require proof of U.S. citizenship in the November midterm elections. Lawmakers voted 218 to 213 to approve the Save America Act, with only one Democrat joining Republicans to back the measure. The action sends the legislation on to the Republican-led Senate, where it is expected to receive a vote but unlikely to garner the 60 votes. Filibuster-proof majority needed for passage. The bill is the latest version of election legislation that first emerged during the 2024 presidential campaign, driven by Trump's claim that large numbers of people in the country illegally have been voting in federal elections. A similar measure passed the House twice, last April and in 2024, only to die in the Senate. The bill will require proof of citizenship when registering to vote in the midterms. Officials who register anyone without the required documentation will be imposed with criminal penalties. Republicans also added a photo ID requirement for people casting ballots at the polls or via mail-in ballots in subsequent federal elections. They cited polls, including a Pew Research Center survey showing that 83% of voters, including 71% of Democrats, back photo ID for voters.
Padamkan komputer untuk lebih penjimatan.
U.S. House lawmakers voted Wednesday to reject Donald Trump's tariffs on Canadian goods. The measure brought by Democrats was approved 219 to 211, with 6 Republicans joining the effort. The House can consider measures to end the national emergencies Trump declared last year to impose sweeping tariffs on imports from various countries. But any actions aimed at undoing Trump's tariffs on Canada and other trading partners will still need U.S. Senate passage and the president's signature. Even if it clears the Senate, it would face a certain veto by Trump, and Congress would unlikely muster the two-thirds majority needed to override the veto. Trump sought to inject himself into the action at the last minute, issuing a direct political threat to lawmakers from his own Republican Party as the vote was taking place on the House floor. Wednesday rebuke comes after the expiration of a measure barring any votes on the issue of tariffs in the chamber. Canadian police on Wednesday identified the person who carried out a deadly school shooting as an 18-year-old woman with mental health issues, but did not give a motive for one of the worst mass killings in Canada's history. Police tape could be seen surrounding the school and the scene of the mass shooting as authorities cordoned off the area. The killer, who police name as Jesse Van Rootselaar, died by suicide after the shooting on Tuesday in Tumbler Ridge, a remote community of 2,400 people in the Pacific province of British Columbia. Police revised the death toll down to 9, including Van Rootselaar, from the initially reported 10. Deputy Commissioner Dwayne MacDonald, commander of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in British Columbia, said on more than one occasion, Van Rootselaar had been apprehended under the Provincial Mental Health Act for an assessment. She once attended the school but dropped out 4 years ago. The shooting ranks among the deadliest in Canadian history. Canada has stricter gun laws than the United States, but Canadians can own firearms with a license. Cuba is bracing for an unprecedented disruption in its aviation sector as intensified U.S. sanctions have increasingly restricted its access to energy resources, including aviation fuel. Starting 10 February, 9 major airports across the country, including Jose Martin International Airport, is in its capital city of Havana, will suspend one aviation fuel supplies until 11 March. All international flights must now arrive with sufficient fuel for their return journeys, while domestic flights are completely suspended. Cuba, the largest island nation in the Caribbean, relies heavily on air travel to maintain its global connectivity. Over 30 international airlines operate regular routes connecting Cuba with US, Spain, Mexico, Panama, and other destinations. However, the sudden fuel shortage has caught many carriers and passengers unprepared, with some airlines contemplating cuts or cancellations on their Cuba-bound routes. The fuel shortage comes amid heightened U.S. pressure on Havana. In response to the growing crisis, the Cuban government is reportedly preparing emergency measures, including limiting fuel sales and shortening public service hours in an effort to preserve resources for essential operations. Israel's leader Benjamin Netanyahu said on Wednesday it will join U.S. President Donald Trump's Board of Peace initiative during his visit to Washington, where he met Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. After meeting Rubio on Wednesday, Netanyahu posted on X that he signed Israel's accession as a member of the Board of Peace. Netanyahu was in Washington to discuss Iran with Trump. A UN Secretary Council resolution adopted in mid-November authorized the board and countries working with it to establish an international stabilization force in Gaza, where a fragile ceasefire began in October under a Trump plan on which Israel and Palestinian militant group Hamas signed off. Under Trump's Gaza plan, the board was meant to supervise Gaza's temporary governance. Trump thereafter said the board, with him as chair, would be expanded to tackle global conflicts. The board will hold its first meeting on February 19 in Washington to discuss Gaza's reconstruction. Coming up, two Chinese nationals appear in Australian court after charged with espionage. Stay with us. But first, Argentina's Senate debated a controversial labor reform bill on Wednesday as thousands of workers gathered outside the National Congress to protest the proposed legislation. The reform, pushed by Libertarian President Javier Milei's government, aims to incentivize formal employment and reduce severance payments and wrongful termination lawsuits. The bill also modifies overtime pay, creates a dismissal fund, and restricts the scope of strikes by establishing minimum service requirements during labor actions, while limiting union financing by capping worker contributions to labor organizations. Ruling party Senator Patricia Bullrich defended the legislation as necessary to balance an unbalanced system and address excessive litigation, while opposition Senator Mariano Recalde argued the law contains no provisions benefiting workers. Major unions, including the General Confederation of Labour, CGT, called the demonstration, with some sectors, including state employees and agro-export workers, launching strikes. The ruling party, which lacks a majority in Congress but modified the bill to attract opposition support, claimed it had sufficient backing for approval, with the measure requiring subsequent passage in the Chamber of Deputies if approved by the Senate. The United Nations Development Programme began clearing a huge wartime garbage dump on Wednesday that has swallowed one of Gaza City's oldest commercial districts and is an environmental and health risk. Work had started to remove the solid waste mound that has overtaken the once busy Fras market in the Palestinian enclave's main city. It formed after municipal crews were blocked from reaching Gaza's main landfill in the Johor al-Dik area, adjacent to the border with Israel, when the Gaza war erupted in October 2023. The area in Johor al-Dik is now under full Israeli control. Over the next 6 months, UNDP plans to transfer the waste to a new temporary site prepared in the Abu Jarad area, south of Gaza City, and built to meet environmental standards. Now, the site covers 75,000 square meters and will also accommodate daily collection. The project is funded by the Humanitarian Fund and the European Union's Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid Operations. The Gaza municipality confirmed the start of the relocation effort in collaboration with the UNDP, calling it an urgent step to contain a worsening solid waste crisis of about 350,000 cubic meters of rubbish accumulated in the heart of the city. Two Chinese nationals appear in court on Wednesday after Australian police charged them with foreign interference on grounds of covertly collecting information about a Buddhist group on behalf of a Chinese government security agency. It is the second instance of Chinese nationals being charged under foreign interference laws that Australia introduced in 2018, and the pair become the fourth and fifth individuals so charged. The Australian Federal Police said a 25-year-old man and a 31-year-old woman allegedly worked with another Chinese woman who was charged in August to gather information about the Canberra branch of the group, Guanyin Chita. Each defendant faces a count of reckless foreign interference, carrying a maximum jail term of 15 years on the court appearance in the Australian capital. China's embassy in Canberra did not immediately respond to requests for comment.
Tutup tingkap dan pintu untuk kekal dingin dan lebih jimat.
Mexican Health Minister David Kershnovich said on Wednesday that at least 28 people in the country have died from the measles outbreak that began in 2025. Authorities have registered 9,074 cases so far. Mexico has 28 million measles vaccines to distribute, which President Claudia Sheinbaum said are sufficient, and there will even be some left over. The official data showed the country has 6.7 cumulative cases of measles per 100,000 inhabitants.
Tenemos 28 casos confirmados. Hay un caso más que será el 29 en caso de que se confirme que fue por sarampión. Y es importante también mencionar que 21 de los casos ocurrieron al principio de la pandemia, de los casos que ocurrieron en Chihuahua, fundamentalmente en la gente que no se había vacunado. Ha sido desde niños, menores de edad, hasta población que que cae en el riesgo de los 12 a los 49 años. O sea, ha ocurrido en todos los grupos.
The Mexico City government has deployed 300 brigades and set up 124 vaccination booths in public spaces such as metro stations, markets and parks. Citizens can use an app to find the closest site. On Sunday and Monday, 38,000 shots were administered, the government said in a statement, bringing the total to 923,000 since August 2025. Armed rebel forces killed 5 police officers in northwest Pakistan on Wednesday as the South Asian nation grapples with a rising wave of violence. Police said they came under attack upon their return from an operation against the rebel forces on the outskirts of the city of Dara Ismail Khan. The rebel forces who were hiding in the forest opened fire on the police patrols, a police statement said. It said the police killed 4 of the rebels in a retaliatory attack. No one claimed responsibility for the attacks. The city sits on the edge of lawless Waziristan district along the Afghan border, which has long been home to militants known as Tehrik-e-Taliban, Pakistan. Rebel violence has been on the rise since the TTP revoked a ceasefire with Islamabad in late 2022. A suicide bombing killed over 30 people at a mosque in Islamabad on Friday. That's it on World Today. Until next time, I'm Brenda Paul. Salam Malaysia Badani. Thank you for watching and take care.